We're going to talk more about conditional formatting. We're going to cover data bars, color scales, and icon sets. Data bars are part of the conditional formatting arsenal that you can find in the Styles group on the Home tab by left-clicking Conditional Formatting, and we see data bars. The flyout menu gives us 12 options. We have 6 gradient fill options and 6 solid fill options. I'm going to select a gradient fill and go down and then select a solid fill using the same color. And you can see the difference. Along with the 6 gradient fill and 6 solid fill options, there's more options available by left-clicking More Rules. In this dialog box, we have a drop-down where we can select either color scales, data bars, or icon sets. Of course, we're talking about data bars, so I'll leave it at what was the default, and left-click Show Bar Only. And I think the gradient fill looks a little better than the solid fill. I'll leave it at the color blue, and I'm going to add a solid border. And in the preview, we can see what it's going to look like. I'm going to left-click OK and accept that. Left-click off of that. So I've chosen to show just the bars and not the numbers with a gradient fill with a border. A lot of times a border can be helpful when you're using a gradient fill because you can more clearly define the length of the bar. We have some options with negative numbers as well. I'm going to first select the area that I want to format. And the options that we have for negative values is somewhat driven by the choices that we make on this dialog box. For gradient fill, I'm going to select a border, a solid border. And for negative values, and I've got a choice of fill color, or I can apply the same fill color as the positive bar. And I also have the ability to select all sorts of different colors from the color options. I'm going to leave it at red. And since I selected a border for the positive bars, I also am able to determine a color for the negative bars. In this case, I'm going to apply the same border color as positive bars, which is black. And I get 3 options as far as the axis setting goes. I'm going to leave it at automatic to show you what that does. And the axis color I can also set. I'm going to leave that at black. Left-click OK and left-click OK. And what we have are data bars that are blue for positive, red for negative, and our axis, which is black, floats in the cell so that the total span of the cell, which is on the positive side 30 and on the negative side negative 15 or 45, floats about 1/3 of the way into the cell. Selecting the range I want to format again and going back to data bars, more rules. This time I want to set the negative axis at the midpoint of the cell. And the result is what we would expect it to be, which is the axis is now centered in the middle of the cells. We have a third option. We can set the axis setting to none and show negative value bars in the same direction as positive. I'll left-click OK. Of course, they're going to be 2 different colors still. Left-click OK. And we get a result that may be a bit counterintuitive. Whereas before, the smaller the negative number was, negative 15 is a smaller number than negative 5, the larger the negative bar was, the longer the negative bar was. In this case, all the positive and negative numbers are scaled the same, so that the largest number, 30, gets the largest positive bar, and the smallest number, negative 15, gets no bar at all. And 0 is shown as a positive number. It's got a bar even though there's no value there. So the graphic display for showing the bars in the same direction, to me, is a bit confusing. But be that as it may, we have several other options where we can extend the bars, conditional formatting, data bars, more rules, to the right. Go right to left. And we can go left to right, and we can also extend the ranges. I'm going to press Control and select 2 non-contiguous ranges so that when we set up our data bars, both of those areas, numbers, are taken into account when the bar's length is being determined for each cell relative to all of the cells that are selected and all the values in those cells. So they're scaled according to the population that's made up of these two non-contiguous areas. And I'm going to orient these from right to left. So you can select ranges that are non-contiguous and have those bars scaled consistently. The last thing that we can do with data bars is to determine the minimum and maximum value in more than just the default way. We can input a number, we can input a percent, or we can use a formula that either is actually a formula or it can be a cell reference. And I'll show you what the impact of this will be. Our low number, I'm going to make whatever the value that's in F37. And our maximum value, I'm going to set to whatever the value that I input into cell F38. I'm going to left click OK. And since I have no values in either one of those cells, the data bars look a little funny. They're all the same size. But I'm going to put a minimum value of 1 and put a maximum value of 14 and enter. So the ability to establish a minimum and maximum number allows us to determine the scope and the range of the numbers that Excel will use to then scale the size of the bars in the cells. Color scales allows us to paint a range with colors whose intensity is driven by the value of those numbers as they're compared to other numbers in that range. So what the heck do I mean by that? I'm going to select this range of numbers, left-click Conditional Formatting, go to Color Scales, and we have a lot of options that we can select from. We get a preview with these standard options, and I'm going to select a color scale that's based on 2 colors. The higher the number, the darker the shade of green. The lower the number, the lighter the shade of green. That's a 2-color color scale. We also have the option to select 3-color color scales by going to More Rules, 3 colors. And the default is the lowest values will get a red hue, the middle values, the 50 percentile values, will get a yellow hue, and the highest values will get a green hue. We can change those breakpoints to input a number or a percent or a formula, as we could in data bars. We can change the colors that we're using. And because we can change the colors, we can make the lower values green and the higher values red if we want to. The highest values would be good if this was sales. It would be bad if it was cost. So it's all relative to what the numbers actually mean. Left-clicking OK, it becomes very easy to see the high and low values. We also have the ability to set up some icon sets that can do one of 4 things. We can show direction. I'm going to go to icon sets. We have 7 different options. 3 of them are black and white, 4 of them are color. We have the choice to choose 3, 4, or 5 icons. I'm going to choose a simple one, left-clicking the arrows. So we have directional icons, and we have shapes, and we have indicators, and we have standard rating icons. And these you might recognize if you get consumer reports. And just like with color scales and data bars, we can establish more rules with icon sets. We can choose the icon style, and I'm going to maintain the style to be the rating icons. We can select Show Icons Only, and we can establish the breakpoints or the values when one icon becomes another icon, and we can do that in terms of percent. We can input a hard-coded number, or we can input a formula and reference a cell value. I'm going to left-click OK. And there we have just the ratings showing without the numbers. So that was data bars, color scales, and icon sets. We have a lot of options when it comes to data bars. We can have a gradient or solid fill. We can put a border on the bar or just show the bar and not the numbers. We have 3 different ways we can establish an axis for negative numbers. We can extend the bars right, left, and we can include non-contiguous ranges, and we can even drive the scope of the range of numbers that Excel uses to determine the length of the bar. We have color scales that visually show the number's relative value as compared to the rest of the values in the range selected. And we have 4 different categories of icon sets.